Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Should Ridge be responsible for reawakening B&B's Dark Thomas? Ridge was concerned about Thomas, but still called off his engagement to Taylor. Viewers say he should take accountability for his son's recent actions. Ridge expressed his concern about Thomas. Yet, that didn't stop him from calling off his engagement to Taylor on The Bold and the Beautiful. He had no idea that he unleashed Dark Thomas, which viewers say he should take accountability for. Thomas, Matthew Atkinson, returned to Los Angeles to make sure that his father married Taylor, Rebecca Budig. But Ridge, Torsten K., broke his promise to his family. He called off their engagement and reunited with Brooke, Catherine Kelly Lang. Ridge knows how much his son hates Brooke. Thomas blames her for seducing their father and ripping their family apart. On one soap opera message board, B&B fans say Ridge should take accountability for his son's latest actions. On Friday's episode, we got a glimpse of Dark Thomas. He showed up at Brooke's office and warned her to stay away from his father. This scene could suggest that he's headed down a bad path. The B&B must-watch moments for September 16th reveal that Ridge will have to protect his son from Brooke. The original poster on the soap opera message board explained, "I realize that Thomas is an adult, but he's still Ridge's son." Ridge owed him a conversation before rushing things with Brooke, especially because of the gut-wrenching conversation that he had with Thomas. This conversation brought up an interesting idea in the thread. As usual, Ridge is being selfish about his own needs. He does what he wants on a whim, regardless of how others feel. He was quick to leave Taylor brokenhearted in an effort to win back Brooke. Also, he didn't consider how Thomas would react to this news once he found out. Ridge should be held accountable for his actions and the ripple effect they cause on his family, but he shouldn't be responsible for Thomas. As the original poster said, he is a grown adult who has worked hard on himself before. Thomas can make the conscious choice not to go back to his dark ways. However, some fans argued that Ridge was the driving force behind this messy situation. Thomas isn't the only one who's angry on B&B this week. Other fans argued that Thomas should be angry with his father rather than Brooke. Ridge made this hasty decision, and he should deal with it. What do you think? Let us know in the comments section. In the glitzy, chaotic world of The Bold and the Beautiful, few storylines have stirred as much fan debate as Thomas Forrester's ongoing descent into darkness. For years, Thomas has teetered on the edge of moral collapse, oscillating between charming playboy, misunderstood genius, and outright villain. Yet lately, viewers have increasingly asked, is Ridge Forrester partially responsible for reawakening the darker side of Thomas, his son who once was a bright light in the Forrester legacy? To answer this, we must first examine the complicated father-son dynamic that has long defined the Forrester family. Ridge, a man of undeniable charisma and success, has always been a figure of authority and aspiration for his children. Yet beneath that polished exterior lies a man whose own insecurities, emotional blind spots, and obsession with legacy often cloud his judgment. Thomas, unlike his siblings, seems particularly sensitive to Ridge's approval, or lack thereof. Where Steffi often mirrors Ridge's strength and assertiveness, and Hope channels his idealism, Thomas internalizes rejection and perceived neglect. The subtle slights, the unspoken favoritism, and Ridge's tendency to dismiss Thomas's ideas as too risky or dramatic have a cumulative effect. They plant seeds of resentment that, left unchecked, can bloom into something much darker. Consider, for example, Thomas's obsession with romantic conquests, particularly with Hope Logan. For years, Thomas's actions have oscillated between genuine affection and strategic manipulation. On its surface, his pursuit of Hope seems like a simple love story, but underneath lies an intricate psychological interplay shaped by his father's influence, or at times absence. Ridge, in his own way, inadvertently fuels Thomas's delusions. By constantly highlighting Hope's flaws, praising Steffi, or failing to validate Thomas's perspective, Ridge creates a vacuum that Thomas fills with darker impulses. It's almost as if Ridge's inattentiveness signals to Thomas that normal paths to love, power, and validation are closed, leaving him to explore more extreme, morally questionable avenues. Another crucial element is Ridge's professional oversight, or lack thereof. As the patriarch and creative force at Forrester Creations, Ridge has immense power to mentor, guide, and restrain his children. Yet Thomas, a designer of undeniable talent, often finds his creative ideas suppressed or appropriated without recognition. This pattern, repeated over years, chips away at Thomas's sense of self-worth and fairness. When Ridge dismisses Thomas's vision as too edgy or unrealistic, he inadvertently frames rebellion as a legitimate path. Thomas's later schemes, manipulations, and even darker tendencies can arguably be traced back to a sense of professional betrayal. Ridge, intentionally or not, signals that only by bending the rules, or breaking them entirely, can Thomas assert his genius and gain respect. Yet, responsibility is never one-sided. Ridge is a human, flawed and burdened with his own dilemmas, and Thomas is a grown man capable of choice. Here lies the moral gray zone that keeps fans arguing at water coolers and online forums alike. Ridge may have lit the spark, but Thomas controls the fire. In recent episodes, Thomas's actions, ranging from subtle emotional manipulations to overtly dangerous behavior, reflect conscious decision-making, not mere reaction. The dark side of Thomas is his own, and while Ridge's influence may have acted as a catalyst, the responsibility for the resulting chaos ultimately lies with Thomas himself. That said, Ridge's role in reawakening Thomas's darkness is more than indirect. It's psychological and emotional. Ridge embodies a living standard of perfection in Thomas's mind. Every misstep, every perceived slight, every instance of favoritism towards Steffi or Hope magnifies Thomas's feelings of inadequacy. Ridge's love, though sincere, is conditional in Thomas's perception. It must be earned through behavior that conforms to Ridge's vision of the Forrester legacy. This conditionality, familiar to many viewers as a classic soap opera trope, is magnified in the Forrester family by wealth, glamour, and the high stakes of fashion empire politics. Thomas internalizes these pressures, and when he fails to meet them, or believes he does, he reacts not with conversation or compromise, but with increasingly extreme behavior. Ridge's inability or unwillingness to notice the early signs of this inner turmoil effectively removes a stabilizing force from Thomas's life. It's also worth exploring the parallel between Ridge and Thomas in terms of morality and ambition. Ridge himself has a complicated moral compass. He's a man who has lied, schemed, and manipulated when the stakes are high, all under the guise of protecting family or business. Thomas, as his son, has witnessed these patterns firsthand. Perhaps subconsciously, Thomas interprets Ridge's moral flexibility as permission to follow suit. After all, if Ridge bends the rules for the greater good, why shouldn't Thomas when he sees fit? In this sense, Ridge's influence is less about direct causation and more about modeling behavior. By living in shades of gray, Ridge has provided Thomas with a blueprint for navigating moral ambiguity, one that Thomas often uses to justify his darker impulses. The consequences of this dynamic are dramatic, both on-screen and in fan perception. Viewers are torn between empathy for Thomas and horror at his choices. Many argue that Ridge must accept part of the blame, citing the generational patterns of neglect and favoritism as the breeding ground for Thomas's darkness. Others insist that Thomas is a fully responsible agent whose decisions are his own, independent of parental influence. This debate reflects a larger theme within the bold and the beautiful, the tension between inherited trauma, parental responsibility, and individual accountability. In essence, the show asks us whether darkness is born or made, and whether the sins of the father truly manifest in the son. Yet there's another, subtler layer to consider. Ridge's own emotional journey is intimately intertwined with Thomas's. Every time Thomas acts out, Ridge experiences guilt, fear, and frustration. These emotions can cloud judgment, leading Ridge to make choices that either exacerbate or attempt to correct the situation. This cyclical dynamic. Ridge influences Thomas, Thomas reacts, Ridge responds, creates a feedback loop in which both characters spiral further into conflict. Soap opera storytelling thrives on these loops because they are relatable, psychologically rich, and endlessly renewable. They allow viewers to debate endlessly who is to blame and who deserves redemption. Ultimately, the question of Ridge's responsibility for reawakening Thomas's dark side is less about assigning blame and more about exploring nuance. Ridge's actions or failures to act certainly shape Thomas's trajectory, but Thomas, as a fully formed character with agency and intellect, chooses his own path. Their relationship is a cautionary tale of communication gaps, conditional love, and unspoken expectations, amplified in a high-stakes, high-glamour environment. In the end, Ridge's influence is undeniable, but it is Thomas's choices that define him. So, should Ridge be held responsible for Thomas's darkness? Perhaps partially, perhaps indirectly, but never wholly. Ridge's presence, approval, and occasional neglect act as accelerants, intensifying the fires of ambition, resentment, and desire in his son. Yet, it is Thomas himself who fans must ultimately watch as he wrestles with the moral consequences of his actions. The story's brilliance lies in this tension, a father and son bound by love and expectation, yet each capable of choices that can save or destroy them both. In this narrative, there is a subtle warning to viewers, particularly to those who are parents or mentors. Influence matters, but it is never absolute. Ridge's failures and oversights remind us that guidance without attention and validation can have unintended consequences. Thomas's darkness, meanwhile, serves as a dramatic exploration of what happens when talent, obsession, and emotional vulnerability collide. Together, Ridge and Thomas embody a generational tale of ambition, imperfection, and the eternal question: how much of who we become is shaped by others, and how much is forged in the furnace of our own choices? As the Forrester saga unfolds, one thing is certain: Ridge and Thomas will continue to clash, charm, and shock. Their intertwined destinies fuel some of the bold and the beautiful's most compelling drama, forcing fans to ask uncomfortable questions about responsibility, influence, and the fine line between love and manipulation. Ridge may have sparked Thomas's dark side, but in true soap opera fashion, it is Thomas who fans will continue to watch as he decides whether that darkness consumes him or whether redemption remains within reach.